Now, before that, of course, like tens of millions of Americans, we watched the presidential debate last night. It wasn't pretty. President Biden appeared old and diminished, while former President Trump was a fountain of disinformation. Performance tends to matter as much as issues in these debates, and there's no way to sugarcoat Biden's last night. Tara, what were your impressions?
Well, I think you nailed it absolutely right when you said President Biden looked old and diminished. And as you say, that was the appearance. Now, the reality is that he did, for the most part, stay on message, and he was very factual. I think it was CNN said that Trump, there were like 30 different lies in Trump's presentation, where there were about 9 either lies or misinformation in Biden's presentation. And that's really what the Democrats need to emphasize. That's what the president needs to emphasize, is that his information was factual. He stayed on point. He only became personal when he felt like he was being personally attacked. And one of the other things that he needs to do is he needs to, quite frankly, play on the country's sympathy. It is very hard to get up and for 90 minutes just sort of answer questions that you aren't totally prepared for. You're prepared for sort of everything, but you're not totally prepared for exactly how the questions are going to be worded. And so he needs to play on the public's empathy. He needs to remind the public, this is not the easiest thing to do. And if he doesn't, certainly his surrogates need to be doing that.
Well, but at some point, we're talking about the President of the United States. I mean, we need more than sympathy. I mean, just to show sympathy for him maybe isn't the strongest message to have. Luke?
People want competence, and unfortunately debates are more about style than substance. So even if he's being factual, if people can't hear him and he's not finishing sentences coherently, it's not going to play well. And I think this is a real disaster for Democrats. It went just about as bad as it could have. There were a couple of moments where I think Biden came alive when he was talking about veterans and talking about his son. But Democrats are reeling. And on the flip side, Donald Trump didn't do great either. I mean, he said that Joe Biden was a Palestinian who was paid by China, and he's bragging about how he's doing on cognitive tests and how he's lost weight, and he seemed most animated defending his golf game. So this, all in all, is not a debate that I would assign to my students, and it's a really sad moment in American electoral politics.
Yeah, I mean, it was a national embarrassment for sure, and I feared that it would be. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think not only did Biden look worse than I'd expected, but Trump looked better than I expected. I mean, maybe it's that, I think the American public is largely inured to the lies. So the claim this morning that, Trump lied, he lied. I mean, we all knew he was going to lie. He lied. But what he did was and the format favored him in this regard, he behaved rather well, and he looked sharper mentally than Joe Biden did. He just did. He lied, but he lied with, he lied articulately and generally speaking and coherently, and he finished his sentences, and he didn't get overly personal, and he didn't sort of misbehave and act out. He was relatively reserved. I mean, again, it's about expectations.
No, it's a good point, but that's like describing a child.
No, I get it, but I guess my point is that the contrast it wasn't just that Biden looked bad. It was that Trump looked relatively.
And Biden didn't challenge him when he did lie. Michael?
I mean, aside from the theater, right, America deserves a president who will study the three-ring binder. We deserve a president who will sit for policy briefings. We deserve a president who will listen to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This was a study in contrast. On the one hand, we had a candidate who was sui generis, right, one of a kind, who has shifted the geography of reason. This man has shifted the geography of reason. He offers emotion, feeling, opinion, hypothetical, anecdotal, speculative conjecture as policy analysis. And he has convinced a lot of people that his management of their anger and their grievances is a sign of astute leadership. But on the other side of the stage, we had the other candidate who is steady, establishment-driven, believes in institutions. He thinks about the things that matter: quality of life indicators, jobs, income, housing, healthcare, life expectancy, prenatal care, health, education, and welfare. We need a steady hand in America right now.
So you're saying that he's the steady hand, and he does have a record to run on. But a lot of that didn't seem to come through. I mean, he had a strong legislative record, and
It's not what this debate was about. It was about competence. It was about what we're going to see with our own eyes. It was one of maybe 2 times, and I'm really questioning whether there will be a second debate at this point, where we're going to see them, the 2 of them side by side in the same format, living under the same rules. And what people wanted to see was how they performed. And Biden did not perform well.
Well, the other 364 days out of the year, we're going to have a man in the Oval Office who has to do the quiet, intellectual, serious work for the American people. There are 364 days left that a president has to be in charge. Last night is not the end-all, be-all.
Okay, after the debate and the post-debate discussions on CNN, John King said that he's never had his phone blow up like it did during the debate with panic from people, Democrats in Washington and elsewhere, and there's this idea now that Biden should step aside, and does that make sense?
It's too late.
If he does step aside, anyone with a pulse could beat Donald Trump from the Democratic Party.
Well, anybody with a pulse maybe could have beaten him before, earlier this year. Luke, you were talking earlier about just the implausibility of that.
Yeah, I understand why Democrats are freaking out, but it kind of drives me crazy that now we're talking about him stepping aside. The primary is over. Like, we had a 6-month electoral process, and it's coming to an end. And so, yeah, we had this early debate. Yeah, it didn't go well, but logistically, it'd be a nightmare for Democrats to try to choose a new nominee at this point.
Yeah, and that primary process, by the way, was designed to lock it in for Joe Biden early but by the Democrats. So the irony is that, now there's talk about a brokered convention. It's just too late. The time for Joe Biden to step aside. I mean, look, I'm grateful to him for his lifetime of service to this country and for rescuing us from Donald Trump. Please don't get me wrong. But the time for him to step aside in the interest of the country was 18 months ago, and to allow for a primary contest to actually happen.
Okay.